Welcome again to Ballin with Roy and Edwyn. I am Roy S. Johnson, and this is my son Edwyn. And once again, we're going to discuss and dissect the big issues and now big games of the week. How you doing, Edwyn?
I'm good, Daddy. How are you?
I'm good. I'm great. It is finally football season, as my friend, the late Stuart Scott, would say. Booyah! It is football. Football is back. We don't have to go any more weekends for several months now without football. I know I'm excited. I know you're excited. And a whole lot of people out there excited because football is back. College football starts this weekend. High school football started in a lot of places, particularly in the South, at least 2 weeks ago. And the NFL is coming up soon. But before we get that, let's talk about a couple other things, particularly I call it Serena's last dance. She announced a few weeks ago that the U.S. Open would be probably her final major as she evolves out of tennis and moves into the rest of her life, including enlarging her family a little bit more and moving on to ventures. Last night, 2 nights ago, she won her first round match, and this was afterwards. This is going to be every night she plays, every match she plays is going to be must-see TV. It reminds me of several years ago when Chris Evert announced her retirement at the Open, and that would be her last match, and she ended up playing and ended up losing to Zina Garrison. I was in the stadium for that match, and the whole stadium was rooting for Chris Evert, and hardly anybody was rooting for Zina Garrison, but Zina pulled it out and sent Chris Evert into retirement. Of course, now Chris Evert is in the broadcast booth, and she's been I wouldn't say she's been critical of Serena, but she hasn't been as celebratory as most of Serena's fans, as Serena Nation would like her to be. So Chrissy's taking some hits a little bit on her commentary. So, tonight we know that she's going to play her second round match. We don't know if she's going to survive, but all I know is all eyes are on Serena for Serena's last dance. What do you think of this? And again, in the context, we talked about it, of her career and watching a great athlete like this at the end of it.
I think she will survive her match tonight. I think she'll go on to another match. The next match after that might be her last, though. I think it will be. But all eyes are going to be on her, like you said. Everybody, I can understand some critique from her also. And regardless of whatever the critique is now, you want to talk about her being 40 years old. In my opinion, she's the greatest tennis player of all time. So that means, period, men and women, male, female. And just the career that her and her sister have had is amazing. And she is a top 10 athlete, probably top 5 athlete of all time, with Michael Jordan, with Tom Brady, with Muhammad Ali, with LeBron. And
well, that's cool. I mean, you got some great things to say about her. And what I think she's also going to do, she like a lot of athletes is talking about what a struggle it's been to leave the game she loves behind. But I think she's going to redefine winning. I almost wrote a book a few years ago called Endgame, because so many great athletes struggle at the end of their careers because it's something that they love and something that they focused on since they were youth, no matter whether they were all-stars or just playing on a team. Retirement is hard because most athletes, at least back in the day, were retiring in their 30s. Now they can play longer because of nutrition and better workouts, but still you're retiring at the prime of your life and having to move into something else. Serena has already started a family, loves being a mother, and clearly wants to have more children. She's also with Serena Ventures, a venture capitalist, an investor. So again, she's just going to redefine winning. She says, I'm still going to be crazy. I'm still going to be intense. I'm still going to be around. So while we may not be seeing Serena on the tennis court much, maybe just in doubles with her sister, we are going to be seeing Serena, and I'm happy about that. All right, let's go to the NBA. While we're on the family thing, here he is, LeBron James, on the cover of Sports Illustrated with his 2 sons, one about to be a senior in high school and the other a sophomore. I love this photograph. Obviously, as a father, I love seeing this father and son, but the story was great because it talked about LeBron's goal of eventually playing in the NBA with his sons, at least one of them, which would mean LeBron would have to be playing at what, till 2027 at least, unless Bronny decides to come out early. So if he is able to do that, he would be only the fourth father-son duo in Major League sports history. Hockey player Gordie Howe played with his two sons, Ken Griffey and Ken Griffey Jr. played in Major League Baseball the same time, as did Tim Raines and his son. So what do you think about this idea of LeBron hanging around long enough to potentially play with his son in the NBA?
Well, this is about to be year 20 for LeBron. He's in great shape. He's always been in great shape. Nutrition, dieting, exercise, work ethic, everything's there. Despite him declining, he's still able to play for a long time, so he can play past 40 years old. And I think this is going to be the big drive and motivation for him to do so. He wants to play. I don't know about both of them. I don't know about him playing with Bryce, which is the younger son, but to possibly play with Bronny, depending on if he leaves early, because right now, Bronny does not look like an NBA player right now. Let's just be clear about that. First of all, height-wise, he's the tallest is 6'3". Now, Bryce is about 6'5" to 6'6". So he has actually his dad's height. He could get closer to 6'8" also, and not to say that Bronny can't still grow, but that's one disadvantage for him right there. But he still has to develop his game, although he's going to get a whole bunch of college offers, whether it be Duke, and if Coach K was still there, he probably would go there. But, you know, it's possibly to him going to Ohio State, where his father would have went had he gone to college. But there's a strong possibility it does happen. However, I don't know if LeBron is going to be a one and done. He might have to stay maybe 2 years just to develop his game. Because like I said, he is not that good looking like an NBA player like dad did.
I mean, you raised so many of the questions that were in this article that have to be addressed. One, the most important one, is Bronny an NBA caliber player? And if he's not, would his father wield some kind of influence to get his son on a roster so that at least he can say that they played at the same time? We still don't know yet. Like you said, he's only 6'2", 6'3". I think he's been rated as a 4-star guard, but there's a lot of 4-star guards that don't make the NBA. And he's really got to get stronger. I mean, you know, how big is Steph Curry? I mean, he looks
Steph is 6'3", and Steph does have some muscle to him, but he is small. Now, the way his father works and as big as he can definitely be 6'3", 6'4". He still can grow, and at least muscle-wise, mass-wise too. Don't get me wrong. But if he has handles like a Steph Curry, like a Kyrie Irving at that height, or an Allen Iverson, that gives him more of an advantage too. Don't get me wrong. But part of it with LeBron was his height, which he had in high school.
Right. And we also hear about Bronny that he plays the game the way it's supposed to be played. He's a passer, he's a facilitator, and those things could bode well for him. He doesn't have to dominate the game. And speaking of Steph Curry, if you go back and look at pictures of him in high school, he was a skinny kid too. So of course, Bronny can mature and get stronger and at least get to the point where he can stand the rigors of playing it against NBA competition. And look, you know, LeBron in that year will be 43 years old, something like that. Tom Brady is 45. So don't put this out of the realm of possibility. That's the NFL versus NBA. If LeBron continues to stay reasonably healthy, he could play 50, 60 games a year, still be an asset to a team, and it could happen. So this will be fun to watch and stay tuned. But the best part of the story for me is how well he and his wife are parenting the young boys, how they are having them be in the spotlight, but also protecting them as well, schooling them. You could tell by their story that they have a great relationship with their father. And I know every father out there would read this story and take it to heart and want to have that kind of relationship, not just with their son, but with their daughter as well. They have a younger sister who they say has expressed no interest in playing basketball. So for me, it was as much a great family story, particularly about athletes. We don't often get to read those kinds of stories and get access to the men as fathers, as husbands, and raising their children. So the real value of that story for me is showing someone who is at the top of the game, being someone that we don't often get to see, and that's a family man and a father. So LeBron, good luck.
Always strive though to be the father that he never had his father in his life too. So that was a big motivation too for when he had kids. He was going to be that, because you know how that feels to not have that in your life, even though he's had other male figures and coaches in his life.
That is absolutely right. And his mother has shared that many times. All right, so let's go to some Knick news. As we've shared before, you grew up around the Knicks because your mom and I had season tickets. You went to games even before you knew what was going on, and grew up as a Knicks fan. And we're sorry for that, because the Knicks just haven't delivered. But this week they signed R.J. Barrett, their young star, to a 4-year rookie extension worth $120 million. And he's 22 years old. But what made this significant is it seems to put the kibosh on a potential deal for Utah's Donovan Mitchell, which everybody thought was in the works, that they might even play together. What do you think about this extension, and is a deal at all possible now?
A deal for Donovan Mitchell is less likely. Now, first of all, I love the deal because I like you being able to try to lock in and invest on your young player who clearly has a lot of potential. He had a lot of potential coming out when they drafted him out of Duke with his former teammate Zion. And he is a natural scorer. The only thing he has to still improve on, which he did from draft day to now, is his shot. It did improve last year a little bit. He did hit a game winner. That's the one thing. He got moved to shooting guard too, which I knew was going to happen also. But within the next 4 years, to make this investment work, you're definitely going to have to be an all-star. And they're going to have to make the playoffs for definitely the next 4 years, and honestly beyond that too, in order for you to be worth that money. And then he has to also invest it into the team too. Through good times, try to make this team a contender. And when I mean contender, I don't necessarily mean a championship team per se, but to try to get to the Eastern Conference Finals eventually, but getting back to be that, he's going to have to be the number one player, because Julius Randle is not that. That year, a year ago, was a fluke. Again, Julius Randle was an all-star that year, won most improved. But no, he's not that player. He's going to have to be number one. Brunson's going to have to be number two. Then Julius Randle's going to have to be number three. But he's just going to have to work to be one of these new young players, one of these all-stars, because he also reminds me, honestly, of Tracy McGrady. He reminds me of T-Mac.
I mean, I love to see a young player get rewarded for their hard work and their due, but the Knicks are cursed, man. The Knicks just don't seem to be able to make the right moves, the moves that elevate them to contender status, let alone be in the playoffs. So I hope it works out. I hope they continue to build. I hope this is the key to a transformation, or at least an elevation of the Knicks to be the team that many Knicks fans, including you and I, want to see. But so far, almost in your lifetime, the Knicks have been they've been a good team. They haven't been a great team. And right now, it just seems they've been stuck in sad and sorry, stuck in mediocre. So hopefully this will change that. All right, on to the NFL. Let's start with the tragedy. And thank God that Brian Robinson survived. He was shot twice in a carjacking in Washington. This is the former Alabama running back, the rookie for the Commanders. And it's just unfortunate that these things are happening, that a lot of young athletes are targeted, often because they have wealth. We haven't heard yet, at least it hasn't been widely reported, what kind of car he was driving, or even if they knew he was an NFL running back. But thankfully, he was able to survive it. He had surgery. A lot of people in the NFL community reached out with prayers for him, and he reported and showed up and showed that he was doing okay. This was a great image to see, but it just reminds people of how tenuous life is in general, but the fact that a lot of these young athletes are targeted for reasons that you and I don't have enough time to go into. But again, it's not the first time, and it won't be the last, that a young athlete, particularly a young black athlete, is targeted. And fortunately, this one seems to have turned out okay.
Yeah, no, it's just, like I said, it's straight, because a lot of times, unfortunately, it does not end up like this. He's very fortunate to be alive. Nick Saban, his former coach, reaching out to a lot of the Crimson Tide family, reached out to him. Now it's just a matter of going on the road to recovery, eventually he'll be able to start his career hopefully sooner than later. But again, black athletes are always going to continue to be in a situation like this, especially, he's in the Washington, D.C. area, DMV area, that part of the country, obviously, that is definitely a violent, high crime area too. So hopefully he just moving forward, like just continue to, just take more precautions, be more aware of his surroundings, because I'm sure he's heard that before, but especially after this experience too, which I don't know anything about that. I've been fortunate enough to not be in a situation like that. Hopefully praying, but no, hopefully we just be able to see him soon on the football field.
And two, I just want to pray for the perpetrators as well, that they will make better decisions, that ultimately, maybe they'll turn themselves in and certainly they'll pay for what they did. But there's so many young men out there that are making bad choices, having too easy access to guns. We just hope and pray that all of them and all of this changes and gets better, not just in Washington, but in cities across the nation. All right, a little news out of San Francisco. Jimmy Garoppolo, who we thought was going to be traded, that would find another home. Clearly, they couldn't find a place to trade him. He was coming off right shoulder surgery, and he basically lost his starting job to Trey Lance. But they gave him a backup contract of $7 to $16 million with incentives to stay there. Coach calls it a win-win for the team because obviously they have an experienced backup for Trey and who knows the system. But clearly they couldn't find someone in the marketplace willing to pay their price for someone who was coming off an injury. Who knows whether he might be traded later on. But what do you think of this deal? What do you think of him staying there, particularly since they've made it clear that he's not starting?
Well, he's capable of being a starter still in the NFL, but sometimes players like himself, quarterbacks like himself, do end up in this situation. It's good for San Francisco because if Trey Lance does have a stretch of bad games, you can start him again. But if he does, and if he were to go down, I think you do have a capable backup. Now, with Trey, you have the long ball. You do have the deep ball. Trey Lance is 6'4", so you do have that part also. You don't have that with Garoppolo. And also, Trey can run. You don't have that with Garoppolo either. However, when it comes to the shorter passes, you would have more accuracy with Garoppolo too. But this team has made it clear, Shanahan has made it clear, this is the future. This is their quarterback. This is who they're trying to build the team around. That locker room is going to rally around him too. So it's just going to be 1 year. If they possibly do trade him during the season, which there's still that chance, but after this year, he'll go somewhere else. And there are teams that need a quarterback like him too. I don't know if Seattle really tried to get him, but being in the same division, I don't think they were trying to take him to Seattle because he could have very easily started there.
And Garoppolo was 35-16 as a starter, whereas Trey Lance has only started 2 games. As you mentioned, he is not only capable of starting, but he's still capable of winning. So we'll just see how this goes for Garoppolo in San Francisco. All right, college football, you ready? You ready? Okay, one game has been played. Several games have been played, but this one was it was a shocker, but it wasn't. Nebraska, which used to be a great team when I was growing up. Oklahoma-Nebraska games were some of the must-see TV, some of the greatest teams in the country. Nebraska lost to Northwestern. This is no shade on Northwestern. This game was played in Dublin, Ireland, kind of a pre-season, but it's a real regular season game. But Northwestern pulled this out, beat Nebraska. Man, that must have been a long flight home for Nebraska, and how far this team has fallen. What did you think of that game?
I liked it. It was a big physical Big Ten game. I always love to see that. They definitely ran it, definitely had some defense. Both of these teams had to start off the right way. Both teams were bad last year. The Nebraska coach honestly is under a lot of pressure too. That was not a good look for him to lose that game. Also, I was going for Nebraska to win that. Unfortunately, Northwestern did get it. Both teams were definitely trying to get that win, trying to, as well as enjoy the fact that you're in another country, but still try to get a W also too. So one team is going to have a very fun, long flight home. The other one, oh man, it's going to be quiet. It's going to be miserable on that 9 or 10, 8 to 10 hour flight home, something like that.
The Cornhuskers have been shucked already. All right, and now introducing our new Ballin segment called Big E's Picks of the Week. This week we have 4 games, getting Edwyn to break those down, make his predictions, and so we're going to start with Clemson versus Georgia Tech. Break it down, Edwyn.
I don't think there's much that needs to be said. I think everybody knows who's going to win this game. Clemson's going to win this. It'll give them a good, easy win to start the season and hope to have a campaign to get back to the playoffs. And I think they will be in the mix this year. They'll be somewhere throughout the year, I would say 4, 5, and 6. I know later on they're going to have Notre Dame probably. I think it's like towards the end of the season. So like this is a great start though, but Clemson will win this.
So it's not a big test for Clemson. Clemson is just like coming out on stage, showing us what you got, and hopefully Georgia Tech will survive and at least figure out how good they can be. I don't mind teams like this having this great kind of test at the beginning of the season and knowing that whoever they face for the rest of the season probably won't be as good as Clemson. So hopefully if they play well, it will give them some confidence. All right, let's move on to another intriguing matchup, Florida State versus LSU. Edwyn, break it down.
Okay, so I have LSU winning this game. It's the first game with Brian Kelly playing at LSU. I know Florida State, I think they have a new coach also. He was there last year. I know they're supposed to have some pieces too. I just don't think that this is going to be their year again. It's going to take a lot more for Florida State to finally get back into the mix. But LSU, I see them. This will be the first start. I think they'll win, 7 or 8 games this year. Not going to be quite as good as they were a couple years ago. But no, they will at least get this first win to start off the season.
I mean, Florida State is one of the more popular teams out there. College football wants Florida State to be good because they have a rabid fan base. Of course, it's where it's Deion Sanders' alma mater. So a lot of people are rooting for Florida State, but unfortunately, they're not quite there yet. LSU being in the SEC, have had its ups and downs. Of course, under Joe Burrow, they were great, but they've kind of fallen back into the mix a little bit. But it'll be interesting to see. LSU is going to upset some people this year. They're going to upset somebody. Don't know who it is, and they probably won't end up in the playoffs, but they're going to have a decent team and pull off a surprise somewhere along the way. All right, let's move to Georgia versus Oregon. Georgia, one of the top teams in the country. Oregon coming out of whatever's left of the Pac-12. Edwyn, break it down.
Well, I like games like this. You always love games like this, these out-of-conference games, too, in the beginning of the season. Oregon is a very good team. They're probably the best team in the Pac-12, whatever is left of it. And that athleticism, that speed that they have is definitely going to challenge Georgia. However, Georgia, first of all, having a strong defense, being an SEC defense on top of that, having no weaknesses on that defense, those DBs are going to be able to keep up with those receivers and those slot backs of Oregon too. And that D-line is definitely going to challenge because Oregon does have a very good offensive line, which they do every year, can be top 10, top 5 offensive line. But I think that pass rush too is definitely going to be a little bit of a challenge for them too on top of that. But then I know Georgia's going to want to pound the football, and can they do that? Because Oregon does have a fast defense also. They have a fast D-line, have fast linebackers, have fast DBs that went probably both ways in high school too. So will they be able to just push them around, which is what you think when it comes to the SEC versus the Pac-12? But it's going to be, I think it's going to definitely come down to the trenches also, as well as, some pass involved too. But I have Georgia.
This is a classic matchup of opposites. It's like strength versus speed. But it's like you can't hit what you can't catch. Oregon has always had speed and skill, and so it'll be interesting to see because Georgia, it'll be a different type game than Georgia will probably have to play all year long. They may be on their heels a bit because they can't just dig in and knock them down and beat them up because they got to catch them first. So this game, if nothing else, should be fun to watch. Like you, I think Georgia will prevail, but I like Oregon at least to put on a good show and have some breakaway scores that'll say, okay, Oregon's right there. They're gonna leave Georgia a little winded by the end of this game. All right, last one, Edwyn, the big game of the week: Notre Dame versus Ohio State. Edwyn, break it down.
I have Ohio State winning this game. This is going to come down to the wire. This is definitely a game that affects the playoffs. Definitely going to determine the playoffs later along, because both of these teams are going to be in those top five slots. I do have Ohio State. I think Ohio State has the better defense. I know Notre Dame definitely does have a good offense, I would say, and a decent defense too. But I just think that run, the pass on top of that, plus a physical defense. Also, they're trying to be in the playoffs this year. They missed it last year. They're trying to get there. I know Notre Dame, of course, they have a new head black coach too.
Marcus Freeman, got to root for Marcus.
And I think he is going to have a good year. I really do in year one. I think they're going to be probably 4, 5, 6, throughout that mixed off the season. The only problem for them is not having a conference championship game. That is going to be the disadvantage for them, which it really has been for the last couple of years for Notre Dame too, since the whole playoffs has happened too. So you just have to look at this one and then moving forward, okay, if they go undefeated or lose one game compared to another team with a conference championship with one loss, you're going to see how that fits them into that fourth slot.
Should they lose to Ohio State, it would not hurt them in terms of the playoffs. First of all, because the game is the first week of the season, and because Ohio State is one of the top 3, 4, 5 teams in the country, it really won't hurt them, particularly if it's a close game. So we'll see a lot of Notre Dame this year. I'm not usually a big Notre Dame fan, but yeah, I'm rooting for you, Marcus. Always root for the black coach, particularly in a high-profile job like this. It is important for him and guys like Mel Tucker at Michigan State to do well, so that it provides other opportunities for African-American coaches to get that head coaching job, to get that gig. So good luck to you, Marcus. I hope you pull off this upset. As a matter of fact, I'm going to call it a Notre Dame upset over Ohio State. All right, Edwyn, as always, it was wonderful to discuss and digest what's going on in sports. Looking forward to next time. Until then, what do we tell folks to do?
Keep balling.
We love you. Peace.